Hi there, and welcome back to the Fuse Show. Today I'm joined by Surbhi Rathore. She's the CEO and co-founder of symbl.ai. They're working to create the de facto standard of analyzing and using conversational data at scale. She's from India, currently lives in Seattle, loves building the company and increasing our simple fam jam. She's also a travel junkie when possible and a food lover. Thanks for joining us on the show.
So excited to be here, David.
So I recognize you use the term fam jam. Is that a term you use within your company?
Yeah, we
That's
try to
cool.
do, yeah, we do these every Thursday evenings. The whole company joins and we call it All Jam. And so
Hmm.
that's why we just call it Fam Jam. Yeah.
Did you come up with a name?
My sister, actually,
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, she put together that name for our family. Whenever we used to go out on trips, we used to carry like a big box of stuff and she used to color them with like Fam Jam. And yeah, so I just took that name.
I had another guest this past week, and they call their community of users their herd. I thought that was cool too. Like, there's so many cool ways to
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, have unique, distinct names that are
yeah,
like meaningful to those people who are part of those communities.
yeah.
So, how did you come about building an AI company that like revolves around audio data? Like, what's your journey to, I guess, reach this point where you're like, I have to build this?
Yeah, well, my background, I was an electronics engineer when I graduated, but then worked in software for a long period of time. Initially, as a software engineer myself, worked on technologies like C++ plus plus and then Java, eventually JavaScript, and then did build some cool engineering teams that were always working at an intersection of conversation data at scale.
Hmm.
That was the common theme across all the products that I worked at. And only until the last few years before starting Symbol, I was involved in getting a conversation AI product to early customers in Amdocs. And that really focused on how people, and that was a virtual assistant kind of a platform, so the human to machine interaction space.
Hmm.
But that got like us, me and my co-founder both, like super intrigued on the other parallel that exists to machine conversations, which is the natural human interactions that happen at scale almost everywhere.
Hmm.
At that same period of time, I think we saw other companies like Microsoft. They did a whole big demonstration of like an intelligent meeting room that they envisioned. Companies like Gong, which recently raised like massive amounts of funding, like they had.
Crazy how much their valuation
I
is from like what
know.
4 or 5 years.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, yeah. And I'm so it's so proud to see companies like that, which are building amazing vertical SaaS applications, taking
Hmm.
audio and other conversation data in. Uh, they were also kind of starting up when we started the company. I mean, they were starting to get massive scale at the time when we were starting our company just.
I see.
And it was a good kind of like we saw things differently in a way that saying, okay, if there was a developer tool platform, then not this technology will not be limited to these few limited companies, and it could really help scale the ecosystem of voice or conversation intelligence, which is just starting to grow right now. And these awesome companies are kind of leading the charge on those vertical applications. And like think about every single experience or use case, if it is amplified by intelligence, and whether it's audio
Hmm.
data or video data or conversation data, generation of shared knowledge could be totally democratized. And because we totally ignore today the conversation data around us, like we talk and then we're done with it. I
Right.
mean, it's
Then we forget everything
literally,
we said.
yeah, it's literally the only form of data right now which is so undervalued, I feel. So it was exciting for us to, start this journey on saying, let's see if we can help other and empower other businesses and developers who don't have the capacity and the funding to build huge data science teams to really build cool experiences around conversation. So like that's how it started.
So what was the scope of your MVP and what did it like look like back then?
Yeah.
And how's it different from today?
Yeah, our MVP was an SDK that dials in into a telephony interface over SIP and generates action items along with transcription and sends an email and puts everything in an email. That was really
Hmm.
MVP. So it was literally a transcript.txt file attached to an email with action items inside the email. Like that was our super first MVP. And then we expanded that with, a summary UI. We expanded that with web socket based integrations for real time streaming audio. Then expanded
Wait, I want to pause you there for a second. So you're telling me if I'm in a meeting room with call it like four other teammates and we're just all talking and the whole thing's being recorded, it will be transcribed. Not only transcribed, but the action items will be recorded. Is that right?
Yeah, well, we do a lot more than that today, but yes, that was our MVP.
Huh.
Yeah, and it was
And
available as an SDK, so anyone could embed it in their own app. Yeah.
and the success rate was high enough that customers were satisfied?
Yeah, well, I would say it was still early, so our accuracy of action items wasn't like 100%, and it was also difficult
I see.
to figure out like what is an action item and align everyone at the same page, right? But our early customers that worked with us saw good enough outcomes to really trust that it will scale and become better very fast over time. And it did, like now.
Okay.
So it was, I think it was a future that we all were collectively working towards, and there was enough proof points to show that this is already good to get started, and it will get so much better because working with AI and machine learning technologies, I think sometimes we forget, but it's the process and the journey, and it's not like, zeros and ones on the first day.
Right, right.
So it's the belief in the people, it's the belief in the company, and the belief in the technology also that it will scale very fast and become better very fast over time. So I think, yeah, that's the expectation that we had set early on, and we continue to execute on that.
So is that use case still around? Like, can I bring the SDK to a
Yeah,
meeting and then try? Oh, interesting.
it
Okay.
is. Yeah. I mean,
That's neat.
yeah. So, in fact, in addition to that, we have a couple of more SDKs now, but anyone who wants to try it, you can go to docs.symbl.ai and check it out. It's all there, it's all open.
I'm one of the people who is somewhat cynical about voice AI, and the reason I want to have this conversation is because I imagine you are on the opposite side of the spectrum. So this past week, I bought my first voices. Like I'm super late to the game, but one of those like voice assistants where you're like, "Hey, keyword, what's tomorrow's weather?" Like for all the basic things like weather, it'll capture it 100% of the time. But the moment I want to do something remotely complex, like interact with an app, the whole experience breaks down. How are you able to like? And imagine Google has tons of money and tons of engineering power behind it. How are you able to get past that inaccuracy, especially in the scope of meetings? A lot of people talk about like business, like specific key terms that may not transcribe very well.
Yeah, well, there are two different problems here.
Okay.
One is the transcribing the
Hmm.
information correctly to generate the right transcription words itself. And then the second problem is what is important out of that hundreds of pages of transcription to be able to highlight and bring to notice in the first attempt, right? So those are like the two parallel problems. And this understanding human to human conversation, which is free flowing, is different from the chatbot interaction that you went ahead and failed to get the right experience, because there you are talking in like a
I
free
see.
flowing fashion and expecting a machine to understand everything and reply you back with that information. So generating the right response based on the understanding is a complex activity from a virtual assistant standpoint. And that's why probably, you failed to have that interaction. That's why most virtual assistants usually come with predefined set of
I see.
interactions that they can do. And companies like Google, Amazon are working on making their NLU engine for understanding more unstructured conversation better with virtual assistants so that you can talk to an assistant like a human. So there's still work being done there. But we operate in understanding human conversations and being able to highlight and bring to notice the things which are most important. So for them, it's really like they're starting with zero. They're not expecting anything to get back out of
I
that
see.
conversation. And then we filter out stuff and, bring to that notice. And it also depends upon the use case. So if someone is, in a meeting use case, you want action items and follow-ups. I mean, any type of meeting usually has a pretty set language structure when you talk about an action item, right? And you can, it's very futuristic in
I see.
nature. It has an actionability. There are certain traits in the language itself which helps us identify that this is actionable in the conversation. So we've our extensive, I mean, the initial research that we did, we spent a lot of time from just the language comprehension perspective. Our backgrounds is in it, so like we are a little familiar with the space more
Hmm.
than any other company working on it, and also spend
Hmm.
time on learning the different variations in which people speak action items and create a very unbiased way and define it and say this is what an action item is, and that's what the system identifies. Because sometimes that's also a problem. Like,
I
people
see.
will have different notions of what is actionable from the conversation, and so that's why it all went. I mean, I think it took us quite a while in order to come up with like the right definition, the right research, the right kind of understanding of the language in a very abstract manner and put it out there. So now the action item that our systems generate, you can use it, pretty much over any type of conversation data. But like I said, it's a process to understand that language ability. So that's our area of intersection. I don't know if that answers the question that you were trying to ask.
In terms of use cases, you
Yeah.
do mention a couple. Which out of your current users do you find to be a use case that where you provide the most value? And you can define value subjectively however you want.
Yeah, because we are a developer platform, I think our first value is to the companies developing products and services, because they are the ones which want to go to market fast without investing a lot of huge R&D dollars, and they want to create awesome differentiating capabilities for their customers that drives retention and upsell. And that's our first value, is like how fast can we enable this company to go to market with our product, right? And that's with our capabilities, obviously. And that comes with them building the integration in their product, defining the experience, talking about it in the right way. So there are a bunch of things that they need to do anyway, even without the engineering aspect. So for us, the value is obviously first, how much time did this company take to integrate our capability in their platform. Sorry about that. Yeah,
No worries.
in their platform. So that's like one. And then the second is based on the use case that or the vertical in which they are enabling these capabilities for. So if it's a sales use case and they have added a capability to automatically coach agents, the agent coaching use case, which is pretty popular for companies like Gong and Chorus, right? So then they want to be able to decrease the onboarding time of agent and help them take more calls and hence more growth. So like those are the value points in that use case. But it could be very different from, let's say, webinar and streaming platforms trying to add live captioning for accessibility and automatically index based on the topics of discussion for easy searchability within their application. So depends upon the use case and the vertical, like the values change basically.
When I think about Gong.io, I think about a company that's tackling a very specific type of conversation. These are all like, I would like to think that at least 90% of their data is sales conversations. They're not like friends having coffee. It's not like friends on vacation. It's specifically a business to business. Maybe transactional is too strong of a word, but there is a transaction implicit, at least somewhere in there, whereas the scope of all conversations is a little more blurry. Do you find that
Yeah.
complicates the AI problem as you're trying to build an API business versus a product business?
100%. It is definitely. We took a little harder job on ourselves in order to get a horizontal platform out in the market, but we wouldn't have if we didn't believe that we could solve it in the first place. And that's what everyone that brought together in the circle of the company, whether they're investors or advisors or people working inside, we all strongly believe that there is a solution to this problem that can be made available to developers. And so the data that we can analyze today is across transactional, casual, all of that. And that's why we have our capabilities divided in two core sections. One of them is everything pre-built, which is all action items, follow-ups, questions, request ideas, topics, parent-child hierarchies, sentiments, analytics, talk time, overlap base, which is pretty abstract in nature. And you can think about it, like you can put it in any type of conversation data and you'll get value out of it. And then there's a section of the capabilities which enables developers to build very deep domain-specific intelligence that could be very specific to their use case and the vertical that they're trying to solve a problem for. And we actually just announced it recently. It's called trackers. And trackers really enable you to track certain things in the conversation in simple key value pair words or phrases or sentences, just giving a few examples. And our system will semantically extrapolate that in meaning and search through the context understanding of the conversation that we develop in real time and send you back that information. So if you said, let's say, a negotiation, and someone else tries to say, please reduce the price, I don't like this, it will automatically find out that that matches in meaning from
I
a
see.
context standpoint.
Huh.
So that's kind of what, yeah. So that's like one of the most amazing things that we were working on to release, and we worked on it for a long time because it really changes the way people look for stuff in the conversation and the effort that they do to look for that stuff, which I think is the most tedious. Like, assemble the whole data engineering pipeline or put sentences to find intents. Like, it's a really complicated task, and we're really simplifying it with trackers. So that enables us to be able to, service the folks which are looking for abstract intelligence on any type of conversation data, and folks which are looking to build deep domain specific intelligence by giving their own custom inputs. So that's how we are tackling it.
I see. So the idea is if a company like Gong didn't exist and none of its competitors existed, someone can build a gong.io on top of your platform. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, actually, we have customers today that are building
Okay.
companies similar to Gong.io and Chorus and Unifor and Observe. Like, there are so many awesome vertical applications. And like I said, these applications set a great example for so many other products and services to be able to build and expand similar capabilities. So, like, it's good to have them around.
How do you find them?
Yeah. How do I find
How do you
what?
find these developers who want to develop using conversational data?
Yeah, well, we're still finding the magic
Okay.
recipe, I would say. It's still a developing market, and it's very new. Most of the developers and businesses understand transcription really well, and that's usually our first index
I see.
point. Because, yeah, we provide transcription also, but we also provide all these other intelligence capabilities, which can, one, make your transcription like so much more better and useful, and ready out of the box in a very formatted way, but then also help you identify the things that matter without having your users to go through these so many lines of data.
Hmm.
So we usually look for developers that are looking for transcription, for adding voice and video. We do a lot of content, SEO content, just around these things. We also try to solve problems for people integrating voice and video in their platform because that's adjacent to us. And we recently announced a partnership with Agora, by which we can enable so many other developers which are already working on Agora to be able to leverage intelligence and go to the next steps with the audio data itself. So yeah, not a magic recipe yet, but work in progress.
Okay. That's perfectly fine. I think everyone has their part of the journey where you need to figure out how do I find the people who are
Yeah.
willing to pay for this. And it's sometimes it can take years, sometimes it can take a day. It's totally all the
Yeah.
place for everyone.
Yeah, well, we have customers which have been associated with us since day one, and they're building really cool applications and all, and they're all in production, they're all paying. But finding developers at scale that resonate to what we are doing is, a continued problem. In any new market, I
Hmm.
think people face this whenever there's a new market emerging. So, yeah.
So on your website, I see a mention of a use case of like sales enablement. Can you walk me through an example of how AI can be used to help out in sales enablement through conversational data and AI?
Yeah. Uh, Conversations, I think, can be used both pre the conversation data, in real time, post of that conversation, and then in an aggregated way to learn from historic and predict how things are going to go better.
Hmm.
So that's like a common theme which we have seen across any use case, whether it's sales or marketing or customer support or
Hmm.
meetings, anything at all, right? For sales specifically, to be able to learn from historic conversations data on the preferences of customers and how they interact and which channel they discuss about what topic helps inform the future conversations very effectively. So that's one. Second is saving the sales SDRs or the AE's time in order to summarize a
I
conversation
see.
and then create the right follow-ups, which is always critical. Like, I think so much part of sales is all about following up with the right information, and being able to automate that process, automatically recommend you the things that will be relevant for this customer based on the conversation will help obviously lower the time that it takes to write those follow-up processes. And eventually there'll be a time where all of this can be automated completely, 100%. And then also just making sure that based on an agent's previous call records and the top performers, you're able to actually learn
Hmm.
and analyze your own pitches by all the analytics, all the sentiments that customers have in real time when agents are on the call, help them actually with information that if the call is trying to go south or someone mentions a competitor, you can automatically pull out like a knowledge base article in real time and show that, because capturing the customer's attention in real time is like the best thing that you can do. Otherwise it's like lost right after that 30 minutes. So those are like just some of the few ways in which people are using conversation intelligence in sales use cases. And there's so much more based on the products, because all the CRM or sales enablement or sales tools that exist out there, they all fulfill a specific part of the journey. And some products fulfill the whole part of the journey, right? So there's a possibility to add conversation intelligence in each of those parts of the journey to really amplify the analysis of the data that is needed to build a better experience for that moment.
When I think about artificial intelligence, I think of it usually as the summation of two things, algorithms and data. So I think algorithms are like more of a known thing nowadays, but in terms of like conversational data, how do you train the first models? Like, how do you get the data to train the first models? Like, do you just like have back and forth conversations in your like office, record them, and then feed them into the SDK? Is that how, like walk me through that?
Well, we did some creative ways in order to get the information in a very horizontal fashion, and then there were other startups that were willing to provide information and feedback and data in the very beginning. But we took a different approach in order to solve this problem rather than only being heavily dependent on data.
Okay.
So our system actually relies on both supervised as well as unsupervised ways of machine learning in a way that identification of the various dimensions of context itself doesn't rely heavily on the type of data, but it relies more on how conversations are structured. That's why actually we use the term called like hybrid AI is what we use in order to build the whole engine. There are some parts which are dependent on data to identify specific patterns, but they are not so dependent that we need like millions of lines of data in order to identify something. So yeah, we took a different, based on our history and background in the space, we got a little jump start on figuring out the best way to solve the problem. So that's why we are not very heavily data dependent.
Okay. And when you were first building this, did you have a feeling that it was going to take up a lot of like, I don't know, AWS dollars to get the research done? Or like, how do you know how to like ballpark what was reasonable and unreasonable amounts of, because like there's a lot of algorithms out there that require, like you mentioned, lots of data. There's some that require less. Or are you afraid of like lower quality output for less input of data in the earlier days?
I mean, yeah, we didn't release our first version until we felt confident about the outputs. Otherwise, it's like you only have one opportunity when you're in an early stages with customers, right? And you want to be careful of how you use that opportunity. So we were very careful when we got the first version out. Was it enough to provide value and the outcomes? And if the answer was yes, then only we demoed and gave some iterations. But obviously, it was a very fast iterative process, and I think more than data, it's about the feedback. Like how fast can you take the feedback of someone using it and incorporate it back and again take the feedback, because sometimes it's usually not about the distribution of data but also in how the data is perceived and handled by the system. And early on we've been from a foundational perspective, we tried our best to remove all the biases that could come from looking at the data. So we use like data layer protection, we don't refer to any personal information within the models itself, just made sure that the foundations are correct in a way that it'll help us scale the feedback in the right way. Otherwise, our initial engine could have been very biased to the first type of conversation that it processed, right? And that's also another reason why we took a very horizontal approach on the types of conversations that were initially we were demoing or were used by very early customers, even before getting the first version out. So yeah, that's one of the approaches that we took.
So I recognize a lot of your past has been highly technical. Are you the technical leader of this current company as well as its people leader?
No, actually, my co-founder is the
Okay.
CTO of the company. Yeah, my background has been technical, but I think past couple of years, I have been more focused towards working with customers, whether in a capacity to help them understand product demos during the pre-sale cycle, or help put an implementation team that will go forward and actually do production readiness, or really lead teams that are on the ground troubleshooting, massive enterprise deployments. So, but I've always been very fancied by using engineering to solve customer problems, and also love getting the right team together and bring the right people in the journey. I'm really excited by just how the right people could come together and just create magic automatically without having to do any efforts around it. So I'm really proud to have the people in the company that are there today and constantly look for extending our fam jam.
How would you
So yeah.
encourage founders or like soon to be founders who are watching this show to build that magical experience where they attract and I guess are able to hire people who want to make magic together? Like what would you tell them?
Yeah, well, I think it depends upon the DNA of the founders. Like for example, I truly believe in authenticity, like and being
Mm,
vulnerable. Like if you are not there, you're not there. If you're there, you're there. Just like say it out loud, and be just acknowledge the flaws along with the good things that you have in the
mm,
company since very early on. And we've always tried to do that whenever we meet people. Like if someone will ask a question about the company, we'll try not to ditch them by giving a political answer and really help them understand the stage that we are in and how they will contribute if they do
mm,
join us. So, and I think that's because like both me and my co-founder Toshish, we both have that common DNA that keeps us together building the
mm.
company, and we try to get more people attracted to the company with the same DNA so that that culture flows throughout as we grow. And I think it's important that founders building companies acknowledge the DNA that they have in the founding team. And sometimes you want to scale the DNA and sometimes you don't want. And so purposely, try to show that authenticity or whatever you are looking to find in more people early on when you talk to people. And I think that attracts the right talent together.
One of the challenges, and I'm also totally on board with authenticity, but one of its challenges is that people can also authentically differ on certain philosophies. How do you manage that? Like at some point, like not everyone can hold to their view of what they want the world to be. Like there will come a point where people have different views, and how do you resolve that as a leader of people?
Yeah, it's interesting because like I was having a conversation with my head of product recently about a pool party, looking at a startup as a pool party concept. When up till 50 people, I think, or up till like 40 people, whenever you have an offsite, you will try to look for people who will always jump in the pool with you,
Mm,
like no matter what. Like they want to sit with you, drink pina coladas, and chill and talk the same shit all the time. Pardon my language. But as you grow as a company, you will start to see that there people that actually don't enter the pool in those pool parties and sit outside the pool are equally important to scale the company and hold the company and bring diverse values and have a different culturally a different opinion, and that's great. I
mhm.
mean, you want that. But I think the balance is when is the right time to get those people sitting outside the pool. Because if you do that very early on, then you break that initial culture
Mm.
which is being built. So I would say that it's important to get diverse folks, but decide the time when your company has grown enough to have a very strong presence of the core, which are inside the pool, to be supported by folks sitting outside the pool. So yeah, I think that's how I would put it.
Is there any strong difference in core values that you hold, or are there any core values that you hold strongly as an individual that your CTO does not, or vice versa? And if so, how do you reconcile that?
Uh, Not really. I think that's one of the reasons that we are building the company together, because we are very aligned on the core values, and I think it is important to be. You should be able to. I feel that we both complement each other
Mm.
in our skills and things like that, but we hold the same kind of core values that we want us to be vulnerable. We want us to be very authentic. We are very customer obsessed. Like we will work the weekend off, make the whole company come to the office if there's a production bug that
Mm.
someone's facing, and make sure that does not get slipped away. And we feel truly pained if a customer is having a problem, and if we are in a capacity to solve it, and we didn't see it in the right way, like, I mean, we feel that pain always, and I think that's a value that we all carry, and we both carry very intensely. And I don't think there's like a big difference in the values that we both have from a core perspective. Yeah.
How big is your team now?
We are 40 people.
40 people. Okay, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely a lot more than just two. How did you? How many of those 40 that were people that you hired that you had no prior work experience with or no prior work connection with?
All of them.
All of them. Okay. How'd you find them?
Yeah, well, we actually are not working with anyone we have worked before in any capacity. Everyone's new. Initially, people, we found them from word of mouth, references, working in the same network, but we hadn't directly worked
Yeah.
with any one of those.
Hmm.
So yeah, those are basically the channels. Eventually, we started using AngelList a lot. I think that's where we met a few folks, got them as in a freelancing capacity internally to start with, and after that worked with them and just loved working and said that, okay, come and work with us full time. And that's how we started scaling.
And where'd you find these freelancers? Was it also for
Angel,
Okay, oh, gotcha.
AngelList.
I see.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did not know. I guess I haven't used AngelList myself, so I would know the feature of this platform.
I mean, it has been really valuable to us as a company. We've kind of been able to find and connect with so many people at different levels that have worked with us in so many different capacities. So,
Okay.
yeah, I love that tool.
I guess I'll have to create a profile after this.
Yeah, you should.
So how has COVID affected your business, if that's a discernible trait? I recognize it is the early days, but has it like moved the needle for you?
Yeah, actually, selfishly, I think COVID is one of the best things that could have happened for our business. And obviously, it's not a good thing that happened in the world, and we have so many people impacted by it, including our company at different levels. But from a business standpoint and ecosystem, the maturity that it has brought to the adoption of voice, video, and digital conversation has been absolutely unanticipated and at a massive scale. And when we started the company, it was our hypothesis that there will be a time that every single B2B SaaS product will need to have a communication endpoint to enhance the customer experience. And we are in that time now. I mean, like, we had thought that it's going to take like years to get there. And all of a sudden, overnight, by the flip of a switch, it happened immediately. So the speed at which we saw use cases maturing on audio and video was drastically high. And that was one of the reasons that attributed to our growth of, people adopting audio and then questioning, like, one, how do I make this useful? And then two, what's next? Right? Because like, you are on back-to-back audio channels through different tools and platforms every single day, and you're questioning in terms of like, can I do more with this audio data which is getting piped through my platform? And that's kind of where we come into picture. So it definitely helped in, I think, maturing the general ecosystem, more products coming in, more use cases getting discovered, and developers getting excited about building applications which they never thought of building before.
So I guess to reflect the question you shared right now, like, what is next? Like, what is in your roadmap for call it the next 1 to 2 years that you have yet to implement into the core product right now?
I mean, Agora is a partner for us. They enable communications, we enable intelligence. We have partnered together to bring the next gen of communication experiences to market. And we are partnering with other kind of data sources in a similar fashion that enable conversation at different levels, obviously. But in addition to that, we are really excited to bring amazing and cutting edge conversation intelligence capabilities like summarization that can be abstractively done on any single type of conversation data horizontally. It's actually in our labs right now that is just opened up, but we haven't really released it as a product capability, and we are working with some early developers to get some feedback and how do we take it to the next level. But yeah, we will continue to bring together the best of the capabilities in the market in conversation intelligence that can scale value adoption, bring different use cases with the help of our developers and customers that are actually operating on that edge right now. So yeah, that's the plan, and we always want to continue to lead the market in the space like we have been, and we're bullish that we will continue to be the leaders.
One of the things I like to ask people is, I guess, to share parts of their journey as an entrepreneur. Like, what did they learn, or what have you learned that you wish you knew from the very beginning?
Uh, yes, the role of marketing and content in a company at early stages, I feel I did not know and acknowledge the importance so much that I do now. And
Hmm.
whenever I talk to anyone, I always recommend that even if you're like day one in your company, try to create some form of educational awareness content at least once in a week, and that will contribute to you generating knowledge and putting it out there in the wild, and it all comes back to you as a company as you grow. Someone you will meet in 3 years later will remember the article that you posted on your day one, and you'll talk about it, and it's amazing to see how that reflects back on the company in so many years. So I think that's something that I've learned my way. We didn't focus enough since our early stages of the company. Now, obviously, we are heavily focused on creating the right educational and awareness, and just solving problems for developers working in the tangential spaces that we didn't do much before, and something that I've learned and would like to tell everyone else as well.
When I think about content, I think about the question of like, when's the best time to plant a tree? And the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago, so you have the tree today. And I think content is kind of similar. Do
Yeah.
you hold yourself to a certain like commitment in terms of making content, in terms of either number of hours or number of units of output nowadays?
Now, I mean, yeah, now we've grown as a company. Obviously, we have a content team that works directly, on these problems, and we try to push like 12 to 15 pieces of content every month. That's like
Wow.
our
Okay.
frequency right now. Yeah. We try to do that and hold ourselves accountable to be able to do that. But yeah, that's what we do.
And how do you choose what specifically you want to write about in a given month or quarter?
Yeah, I mean, we have a Slack channel with our community where there are a bunch of developers, actually, I think 300 or 350 devs so far, which
Hmm.
are constantly looking at our products and asking questions. And we understand the pain points that they are going through. We try to do some research elsewhere, places like Stack Overflow, Reddit, Quora, and see what kind of questions are people trying to solve for in our parallel spaces, and then try to put together content which will help to solve those problems at scale. That's one. And then the second is we've tried to put together the different use cases in the space because it's a new space.
Hmm.
So, based on our learnings and working with so many customers and developers and businesses, we are trying to put together all the different use cases and the value from those use cases that people are getting, so that it generates more awareness of what you can do with conversations in your product, whether you're building sales or CRM sort of a product, or a webinar platform, or a collaboration product, or a gaming application, or an ed tech, or a health tech. There's so much that people can do. And so one of our jobs is also to make sure that we share the learnings elsewhere, from all the directions together in one location. So yeah.
Do you have an outbound sales team, or do you focus primarily on inbound marketing?
Primarily inbound, I would say. That's kind of our core channel is
Hmm.
primarily that. We do test out. I mean, as a startup, I think you should always test out multiple channels whenever possible. So we keep testing out new ways of customer acquisition. But yeah, it's primarily, I would say, inbound.
Earlier, you were mentioning how there's times when you have like production bugs that prevent an application from working as expected, and people will gather around together and I guess either work on the problem together, or at least show each other support by being there for each other. How often does that happen?
I mean, we are a fast-growing startup, so we try not that does not happen every day, but yeah,
Right.
once in a while, obviously, like every system, reliability is not always 100%. We try to match a certain like 99.6% reliability always through our system. We also, really stand behind it and put it in our policies and make sure we achieve that and things like that, and obviously we have SLAs around that. But yeah, as any fast growing startup, I think these are just challenges as you scale everyone has to tackle.
Do you also find with those, I guess, like crunch moments that it like invades your personal life to a negative degree, or do you feel like you're able to balance it too healthily?
Is there a personal life in a startup?
You can choose a path of slower growth. Sometimes you'll do that.
Well, no. Our It's okay. Let's not go there.
Okay, that's fine.
Uh,
I choose the path of growth myself too. I'm willing to take the personal cut.
yeah, it's so much fun. Also, it's hard to plug out sometimes. Like
Mm.
you get so addicted, and we try really hard to like not look at Slack on the weekends and not look at emails, but it doesn't happen like that. We get so attracted to it, and I was like, all right, yeah, maybe someday I'm gonna go for a hike, but not today. So yeah, no, we love what we do, and I think that's also part of the problem that when you love something so much and you get attached to the people using the product at a scale which you had anticipated before, you just want to do your best and work really hard to make that successful. And sometimes you compromise on other aspects of your life, but I think it's all about a journey, and you learn yourself. And some people, have done it before. They know how to create a balance. Some people are doing it for the first time and they don't know how to create that balance. But it eventually all works out. So I think it's okay.
I don't know if you feel this way, but there's times where I feel like I know the company's moving forward because we're getting feedback from more people. We're getting a lot of knowledge. We're building out like more marketing channels. We're building out more sales channels, but there's no one biting. So it feels like there's no units. Like the revenue numbers stay flat. And I imagine is that something you experience? Is that something that gives you stress, or would you say that you're pretty like just satisfied in the building process?
Yeah, not yet. I mean, like,
Okay.
thankfully, touch wood, we haven't experienced that moment yet. And even since the very beginning, we have not experienced that moment. So, but
Hmm.
I'm sure, I mean, I can relate to people who are experiencing that and how that might cause a trouble. I mean, when we did Techstars Accelerator program back in 2019, we actually got in a very strong habit to follow weekly KPIs. Like
I see.
we just do that company wide. So any kind of these things, we never let it reach to that point where it could cause a problem. Like we try to catch things early on and try to act on that. And we are very like data driven as a company always. So that's, I think, one of the things that we've adopted to make sure that we don't land there. But yeah, I think going back to the whiteboard, you can do anytime. Like I think it's just identifying early on that okay, it's time to hit the whiteboard and kind of like
Mm.
brainstorm stuff. Let's do that and then come back to the business. So
What did you think about your Techstars experience? Would you recommend it to other entrepreneurs as well?
100%. I would definitely recommend it. We joined Techstars, I think, probably 6 months after we started the company. And it was just an amazing experience. And that time things were still normal. So we were all in
Mm.
person. And it felt like an amazing, like a small group of class, which is going through, ups and downs together, staying late at nights, coming early mornings, doing demo day practices. It was just a great time. And I think for us as a company, we got a lot of support from Techstars in terms of, just connecting to the right network of people, building a network for startups in a if you're really not in that same space or have not built a startup before, like if you're coming directly from a corporate, which is what our
Hmm.
case was, you usually don't have a very strong startup network because you've never really operated in that space.
Right.
And I think it was a great way for us to be able to connect to the right people with Techstars. They really put together on a silver platter all the mentors and all the connections that we would need throughout the life of the company and not just
Mm.
that phase. And we continue to use them even today. Every time we want to talk to a portfolio or are doing our next round of financing or wants to get an introduction to a strategic partner, like we still use Techstars network.
Hmm.
So it's really valuable for the life of the company. It kind of gives you a big community to hold on to and also give an opportunity to give back to people as they help you. So yeah.
Did you get in the first time you applied to Techstars?
I think we applied the first time even before we started the company to just like kind of like test
Okay.
out like how
Hmm.
does the response come back. But the real application we only did the first time when we actually got in. So yeah.
I know a few people who would love to get in those sorts of programs, but I guess there's limited bandwidth. You can't take in everyone, unfortunately. And if someone can't go down the Techstars route, what would you recommend for them to do if they didn't have access to Y Combinator, Techstars, any of the major other accelerator programs out there?
I mean, I think depending upon the stage of the company, an accelerator program can really help contribute. to bringing the focus at the right place, because early on in the life cycle of the company you're really kind of like, okay, I'll do this and I'll try this and I'll get this done, and the accelerator programs usually help create a right focus and bring the right people together. So if you can't get in Techstars or Y Combinator, like figure out from your area, domain, technology standpoint, which could be like maybe a tier 2 program that you can get into. You might not get like the dollars that you would get in the other accelerator program, but it could be helpful for sure. Uh, if that's not the case, alternate, find a customer. That's always the best thing to do. Like
Mm.
find your first 3 customers or first 5 customers, and I mean things really change after that. So I've seen companies that try to spend a lot of time building the product first and then getting it out after it's like a really finished version. I'm a big believer of just like getting things out even though they are crappy and not good. Just get it out, test it, have customers play around with it, because then you'll also know how much people care about it. And you don't want to end up spending a lot of development engineering or your own dollars on building a product that no one really cares about. So yeah.
For all the people who are worried about the quality of the MVP, sometimes the existing solutions are really bad. For example, like fax machines. Fax machines still exist, but people still use them on the regular. You can come up with like I guess a simple web app that replaces a fax machine in probably like maybe a few hours, and that's already a better
Yeah,
use case. The challenge there is like it doesn't need to be visually perfect, but you're already substantially better than whatever the competition was.
true, 100%.
How do you encourage innovation within the team? Like how do you build that into your culture? Like how do you encourage people to always push the boundaries?
Yeah, well, we have a flat hierarchy in the company. Like, we don't have like a really hierarchical organization. It's like a flat org. And that way, everyone's really championed and empowered. And it works to a certain extent and size of the company. And it's very debatable because some people will say that it's not a good idea to do that. But for us, it's worked really well because that has really empowered people to be able to directly talk to the decision makers and get things out. We do quarterly hackathons actually internally in the company, which
Hmm.
has continued to champion the DNA of innovation. And they're pretty intensive. We do like a 36-hour straight hackathon, and we're going to be like staying up the whole night here in the US and there in India because our teams are distributed at 2 locations. And
Hmm.
people have built amazing capabilities and products to an extent that some of those have actually product we have actually taken them all the way through into the core product. So there are.
I mean, that's a dream of any hackathon participant to get something meaningful into the actual product.
Yeah, and like all our team members internally, they are really amazing folks that are thinking out of the box and bringing new innovation to the team. And yeah, it's very bottoms up for us as a company always. So yeah, these internal hackathons actually really help drive and continue to drive that DNA in people.
What's the scope of the hackathon? So you gave me the time, it's 36 hours. But what about like, what is the tools available and what is the goal? Is it like free form?
Yeah, it's totally free form. Like you can work on the product, you can work on any piece of the product because they're all core engineers mainly working. And so you can work on any piece of the product, you can work on a data science project, a UI project, a service, or just a dashboard kind of a project, or maybe just a new API.
Hmm.
And yeah, so it's really open, it's really up to them. We conduct it in a way that you have a couple of hours to brainstorm and submit your ideas, and then you have the next couple of hours to put together like the experience and MVP, etc., and then start building and then do a demo towards the end of the 36 hours. It's really intense, and after that, people get so exhausted, but I think it's all worth it.
I can't remember the last
Yeah.
time I did a 36-hour hackathon.
Oh, it's intense, I'm telling you. But we do provide a lot of support in terms of product and tech. So, like our CTO, our head of product, they will always be on standby.
Hmm.
If someone needs like a design, they'll quickly like crank it out, and give like a nice UI design. And if someone wants to solution an architecture, like Toshish, my CTO, he'll do that. So we try to provide as much as possible from an expertise standpoint to the folks that are building, so that they don't have to spend time on doing things that are not really a part of that innovation, but it's really just presentation stuff. So yeah, we do that a lot, and it's a lot of fun.
Cool. Well, I've been thankful for your insights, and it's always great to hear the stories of different entrepreneurs. I just like to end all of my calls the same way. What's the best way for our viewers to get in touch with you if that's something they'd like to do?
I'm very active on LinkedIn and Twitter, so you can reach me there, Surbhi Rathore, and always happy to talk to any budding founders or entrepreneurs that are kind of thinking about building a company or have started building or are already building and scaling. I think it's always great to connect with more people in the same space and help each other.